Alright guys, welcome to another video. Now that this KVK has been decided, just want to give some observations, some thoughts, just kind of like some random tidbits from this KVK, stuff I learned, stuff I wonder about, and I haven't made a video in a while, so why not, right? I actually ended up not streaming any of this KVK, which I'm surprised because I thought I was going to, but it just ended up whether either the timing didn't work out or like when I did want to stream, there's so many people streaming it, it almost didn't make sense for me. But first, watching this KVK, it really, really made me want to fight in KVK. I've only fought in one KVK so far this year, 2024. I've been in one KVK in over 7 months now. It's pretty bad. I migrated into 2268 in March, right? Our KVK actually ended effectively like January 3rd in my old kingdom. And then I had to wait, like about 2 months and to migrate into the new kingdom. And after I migrated into 68, I had to wait another almost like month and a half, 2 months before we entered our KVK. And since then, obviously, there's a little bit of uncertainty after our last loss. We had to wait for some people to migrate out. We're going to go into KVK soon, but it's been a long time, right? But so that's first thought, right? Second, I think this might be my favorite map or format that I've seen so far in all of the KVK. I'll tell you why. I really like how the way it's designed, right? The two strongest camps, usually they're going to be on opposite sides. They actually get to do a one-on-one before Kingsland, right? So if you guys followed during this ruins, a lot of people streamed that. 1093, they just had the numbers advantage. They dominated during the ruins, and after they were able to get into pass 7 over here, right? They were essentially able to at least have a few days of fighting 960 and 2489 one-on-one. I really like that. And then it also allowed like a 2v2 down here, right? And even the water camp and the greenwood camp were able to do a one-on-one down here without having these bigger kingdoms involved. So I really like that matchup. Now, having said that, I think having 5 kingdoms in a camp is ridiculous. In our last KVK, on our side, we had 5 kingdoms total, right? It was 3 camp versus 3 camps. We were a camp, 1 kingdom, and then 2 of our allies, they had 2 kingdoms in each camp, right? So that was 5 kingdoms total on our side last KVK. And even then, it was kind of hard to know what each kingdom was doing, right? We kind of knew what 1 or 2 kingdom was doing, but like it was really hard to keep track. I can only imagine how messy it gets if you have 5 kingdoms in a camp. I think ideally, you wouldn't want more than 3 kingdoms in a camp, just because it's easier to coordinate, right? You can actually feel like you can meaningfully contribute. I just don't know how much fun these kingdoms down here had, right? Just because, as a camp, they're already like, the 2 weakest camps compared to the big boys, right? But then even then, within the weakest camp, then there's like 5 kingdoms apiece. It's just really hard to maybe like get a feel for you actually contributing in a meaningful way. We're able to at least fight toe to toe with opponents, right? They were kind of forgotten. Even the way I'm talking about them now, it's maybe it's a little disrespectful, but in a KVK like this, I don't think the way this matchmaking worked did these 2 camps any justice, right? Like, why not remove all these kingdoms at the bottom? Maybe have 1188 in their own camp here. Maybe you have 2139, 2335, 3102 down here. And you can maybe figure something similar out here. Maybe 1846 on this side, and then 1818, 2142, and 3096 down here. One, it would have been way less laggy, but I think also each kingdom in this KVK could have felt like they were part of. They were able to participate even more, and it would have just been less of a clusterfuck, right? That's just my observation. Who knows? Maybe Greenwood and Water had a great time in this KVK, but I know if it was me and I was in one of those kingdoms, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it as much. Now, having said that, I think it's pretty clear, right? 1093 is just the strongest kingdom in the game. One thing that I noticed that probably impacted them in Kingsland was that the Kingsland is very small, right? I talked about this a few times in previous videos, how this last KVK that we played in and Storm of Stratagems, the KVK was huge. It's got to be at least 3 times the size of this Kingsland. Every time I saw this Kingsland, that's like the first thing I noticed, just the size contrast. And because it's so small, 1093 actually couldn't get enough territory, it seems like, to have all of their players in Kingsland. So a lot of them had to actually march from outside. And although I would say they were competitive with 1960 and 2489, right? But they were consistently competitive, but then eventually losing in the open field, right? Whereas when we saw in the Zone 7, when Pass 7 opened, that didn't seem to be the case. I think one of the factors is just there were more territories, so the full, I guess, might of 1093 could actually all be together, and they made it a little bit more competitive, and that went away in Kingsland. I would say probably the most shocking thing for me, and I'll just be honest, going into Kingsland, I thought like there was like a 90% chance the 1093 side was going to win, right? They were able to fight 960, 2489 essentially to a stalemate over here after Pass 7 open. And then if you looked at what happened down here, Daybreak, right, especially with 1188, I felt like they were pretty dominant. They had a very dominant showing, right? They took more of the passes to enter Kingsland. And at one point, they were 1v2ing 1818, 1846 with less numbers and winning the open field, right? Now, I don't know what happened in Kingsland. That was not the kingdom that we saw in Kingsland. I get like, you know, Kingsland opened. It should be like what, around like 11 p.m. Their time, right? But within like 3, maybe 4 hours, 1188 was almost completely gone, right? I guess they went into their downtime, went to bed or whatever. Like, but even after they came back, right? When they were trying to 2v2, right? So I saw 1188 actually come back after their quote unquote downtime is over. It was 1093, 1188 versus 960 and 2489. And it was fairly evenly matched, but I would still say the 1960, 2489 team was on top. That was not the kingdom that we saw when Pass 7 opened for 1188. So I don't know exactly what happened. I almost wonder if there was something going on that we don't know about that affected morale, because I was shocked at their performance in Kingsland, right? Maybe someone can tell me or they have a different perspective on it. But before this KVK started, I was under the impression, and I've seen them fight, that 1188 was like a top 5 kingdom, right? Maybe not top 3, but the 4th or 5th spot up for grabs. I would put 1188 squarely in the mix. And then after watching their Pass 7 opening and fight, I would have even been inclined to say that maybe they were number 3, right? Who knows? But whatever kingdom we saw when Pass 7 opened, that was not the same kingdom that showed up in Kingsland. I don't know exactly what happened, but it's very, very curious. As far as the matchmaking here, it ended up seeming very one-sided in Kingsland. I think that lack of territory for 1093 really ended up hurting them, and then obviously 1188 did not perform in Kingsland like they did when Pass 7 opened, which also really tilted it the other way. Not gonna lie, I was a little worried because a kingdom with 1960s profile, I was actually worried that if they lost again, I don't know what's gonna happen to the kingdom, right? Because they were, for the most part, recognized as the strongest kingdom in the game. They were one alliance, right? We all know them to be Krakens, and then when they lost, a lot of players retired or migrated out. And from what I understand, they had to actually delete troops or kill off a lot of troops just to drop below Imperium to be able to bring in more migrants, right? So a lot of their players were new, all right? So the foundation wasn't as solid as it was before. And also they had to go through a lot just to actually even drop Imperium to bring in migrants. I was actually worried for them that if they lost this KVK, could they actually recover, or would it be the end of 960 as I know it, right? Like, because these other kingdoms, 2049, they taken losses, they reloaded, they came back. 1093 has been around forever. By all accounts, have a really strong community, right? But 960 had just undergone a big change. So foundationally, they haven't had enough time to kind of establish that foundation again. And I was a little concerned. And then if, let's just say, hypothetically, 960 lost and then they ended up not coming back, right? Like they kind of fall out of their place as like one of the top kingdoms in the game, then who was going to fight 1093, right? Like if 960 lost, there was literally a fear for me that maybe you get a domino effect where maybe 960 kind of drops out, then no one ends up fighting 1093. They can't get a match found, and they're almost like forced to disband because if they take out 960 and 2489 combined, like literally who can match up with them, right? So having said that, I personally was kind of rooting for 1093, not because of any like personal vendetta or agenda or anything. It just like I really like how, despite the odds, 1093 is still like a 3 or 3.5 alliance kingdom. Just from rumors, what I've been told, I like a lot of the stuff they do. It seems like they have a very strong community, and they're very, very strategic and smart in the way they approach things. So, low key, I was kind of like rooting for that side. Although at the same time, I did not want 960 to fall and then disappear. I think it's good for the game that some of these kingdoms actually make it, and they're all kind of like the pillars of the game. So, having said that, I think honestly for me the biggest question mark is going to be 1188, right? Like I know they lost before, but they don't lose often. And without knowing more, this is just from an outside observer looking in, I almost wondered there was some kind of issue affecting morale or something. Because from my, again, outsider perspective, the kingdom that showed up in Kingsland was not the kingdom that showed up when Pass 7 opened for them, right? So overall, thoughts about this KVK, I think there was a lot of hype going in. The Kingsland was kind of anticlimactic. The highlight for me was actually the second day or late during the first day when 1188 kind of came back on, and they actually wanted to they actually ended up grouping up with 1093 to 2v2 960 and 2489. And those fights were epic. Like the amount of marches on the field, the amount of maneuvering back and forth, the organization, like that's, I want to find in a KVK like that. It was awesome watching. I just learned a lot, really, like watching that more from like a bigger picture of like strategy, like positioning, right? Like when people were locked in, you saw very little like useless fighting on the side chasing KP. Like they were very, very objective focused, and I was very impressed. Like I hope the people that did watch this, they also like took away from that. I think the more kingdoms that have leaders that instill discipline and like good objective fighting within their kingdoms. So basically, the higher the quality of the fights and the strategic nature of the fights in this game, the more fun it is for people, and the longer this game will last, right? And by no means do I think this game is dying. Finally, just thoughts on the towers. So I didn't notice this until Kingsland, right? But there were flags where you can't burn it for like X amount of time. I don't know the exact amount of time. At first, I hated it, right? It's almost like just like a cheat where, oh, okay, you have this flag and they can't burn it. It's like, what the heck? But once I kind of saw it, I realized I actually like it a lot, right? Because when you add something like that, it adds a whole new layer of to be strategic, right? So now you can actually strategically place. I don't know how many flags of those exactly you have. Like, do you have like 5 a day, 3 a day, or something? And then you can start choosing strategically how you want to use them to maximize their benefit. I think the more ways you can actually almost like do things like this, where you can play chess and try to out strategize, outmaneuver people in a way where they didn't think about. That's not corny and cheap. I'm in favor of that, right? So I do like those flags that that can't be burned for X amount of time. I don't think you should have too many of them, right? But it's almost like this special card that you could play, and both sides have it. It's just who plays it better and utilizes it better. As far as the outpost, I'm not a big fan of the outpost. I think I don't know. I'm just not a big fan of it. Like, especially like, you know, because apparently it was so broken where you can actually put like like every player could put like summon marches in it and just instantly pop out and storm a rally and stuff. I don't necessarily think they should have changed it in the middle of KVK, right? If you design that and something doesn't work, uh, you know, take the feedback, but maybe change it after this KVK. It was kind of weird that they changed it right before Kingsland opened, which also opens Lilith up to like criticism of like being biased and stuff like that. I don't necessarily think that's the case, but I just think, you know, like if there's a rule that doesn't work well in sports, right? Do you change it during the season when some people have already exploited it and some people haven't, or do you just kind of change it after the season and just kind of chalk it up to like poor design, right, or like a poor rule? I would have preferred they did it afterwards, but overall, I would say this KVK didn't end up being the hype KVK it was, just because Kingsland was pretty one-sided. But I did learn a lot. I'm excited to finally get into KVK again, and those are just kind of some of my thoughts on it. All right. If you watch all the way to the end, you haven't yet, please like the video and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys next time.